All right, welcome back to another episode of No Shame with Shane. I'm your host, Shane Fordham, with all the shameless sports takes. Now, talking some football today. OTAs are just about wrapping up this week as we get ready for mini camp this summer for the NFL. But we got some guys that haven't been on the field and probably won't be on the field during mini camp because of some contract disputes, starting with Terry McLaurin and the Commanders. Now, the Commanders and Terry McLaurin haven't yet come to terms on a new contract for starting in the 2025 to 2026 season. But this dispute in specifically, I'm not totally concerned about Terry McLaurin not suiting up as a Commander this year. I'm not concerned, especially in comparison to some of these other ongoing disputes right now, like Trey Hendrickson in the Bengals, Shamar Stewart in the Bengals, maybe even TJ Watt in the Steelers. I'm definitely less concerned about Terry McLaurin and the Commanders as I am any other ongoing dispute right now, just because of who we know Terry McLaurin is, or who he at least has shown to be, how invested the Commanders have shown to be in Terry McLaurin. You know, Terry McLaurin has really been the most consistent aspect of this offense, really the only consistent aspect of this offense, maybe even the entire team since he was drafted in 2019 out of Ohio State. That's the only consistent thing about this organization over the past few years is Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin's impact on the field for this Commanders team. No matter who is that quarterback, this man is going to be healthy and he is going to produce season after season after season. Doesn't matter if it's Sam Howell back in the backfield. Doesn't matter if it's Case Keenum. Doesn't matter if it's Jacoby Brissett. Doesn't matter if it's a aging Alex Smith, Carson Wentz. Terry McLaurin is going to produce. He's going to give you over 1,000 yards every season. Only Terry McLaurin only has one season where he has under 1,000 yards, and that was his rookie year. Every year after that, he's had over 1,000 yards. This year, putting up his highest amount of touchdowns in 13, catching touchdowns in 13. Terry McLaurin is a consistent weapon, a consistent piece to have in your arsenal, no matter who is throwing him the ball. So it doesn't make sense to me that Terry McLaurin has been that sort of consistent bright spot for this Commanders offense throughout all of the hard times that they have had since he's been drafted, to now want to seek out a different situation when they are just now sort of arriving on the scene. We saw how much noise the Commanders were last year. We saw how much of a winning team they were last year, getting to their first conference finals, their first conference championship game in over 30 years. It doesn't make sense to me that Terry McLaurin would now be displeased with his situation. He's already had he's already signed. If Terry McLaurin could sign a contract extension over a Dan Snyder ran Commanders team, Redskins team, there's no reason for me to believe he won't come to terms with a Josh Harrison owned a Josh Harris owned Commanders organization with a now that finally has a franchise quarterback in Jaden Daniels. Like if Terry McLaurin could stick it out through all of those hard times, coming off of the best season he has ever had, his best career season, if he could stick it out through all of those hard times, coming off of the year they just had, it doesn't make sense to me that he wouldn't want to renew his contract, or wouldn't want a new contract under this new regime now that they are this close to winning. Now that they are this close to finally winning, finally being a playoff team, it doesn't make sense to me. I'm not really concerned about Terry McLaurin's future in a commander in Washington. I'm just not. It's and frankly, it's not really in his best interest to want a new situation either. It's not in his best interest. Like, this team is really built around his chemistry with Jaden Daniels. That was the center of the success of the Commanders last year was his ability to connect with Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels' ability to connect with Terry McLaurin on those deep balls. Like that deep attack, that passing attack, that deep threat, that was the bread and butter for this Commanders team. It's really what the defense fed off of as well. Like this whole team was really revolved around the connection between Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin. It improved the run game. Like Terry McLaurin having that connection between Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin, it made the run game that much more effective as well because defenses couldn't stack the box. They had to worry about Terry tearing the top off the defense. So I definitely think it's not in Terry's best interest to want a trade now that he finally has a franchise quarterback in Washington, but not just a franchise quarterback, a guy that could be an elite quarterback, can prove to be an elite quarterback in his second year as a starter, and Jaden Daniels. I don't think it's in his best interest, but it's definitely not on the Commanders' best interest to not make this work. It's definitely not in the Commanders' best interest to not make this contract work, to not get a contract signed for Terry McLaurin. Like, I don't think that's going to be a problem, but I do think it's a little weird that it hasn't happened yet. Like, I think it's a little weird how long it's taking for the Commanders and Terry McLaurin to come to an understanding because of just how vital Terry McLaurin has been to this offense for years now. For years. And still, and regardless of being in frankly, a terrible situation, there haven't been any reports of him being a cancer in the locker room. There haven't been any reports of him being like distractingly disgruntled. Like there haven't been any issues of him really complaining, in an unhealthy manner. They're like you'll hear reports about Stefon Diggs not being happy. You'll hear reports about George Pickens not being happy. You'll hear different reports about different guys, but this guy Terry McLaurin, I mean, he's been in a worse situation than either of those two guys I just named, and has still been a bright spot for the team, has been a true leader on this team. If I'm the Commanders, like, and I have a guy like Terry McLaurin who is just rarely has a bad attitude, is vocal on the field and in the locker room. A guy like that who is also as talented as he is, it wouldn't make sense to me as a GM to want to just be okay with letting that guy walk or with seeing him depart from Washington. It doesn't make sense to me. Like if I'm looking at a guy like Terry McLaurin, like if I'm the Commanders GM, if I'm their front office, I'm doing whatever it takes to sign Terry McLaurin. Like I know guys will look at it and say, well, he's 30 years old. Like are we willing to pay Terry McLaurin CeeDee Lamb type of money? Are we willing to pay Terry McLaurin Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson type of money? And what I'll say is yes, I would. As a GM for the Commanders, I would do whatever it takes to keep Terry McLaurin in a Commanders uniform, not just because of how talented he is, but because the Commanders have the money to spend. The Commanders have the money to spend. Them having the resources that they have, I'm using those resources I'm using those resources on the most important assets, and one of those most important assets is Terry McLaurin. Like I'm looking at a guy like Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin is honestly to me a top 10 receiver in the NFL. He's top 10, top 5 if we're talking in 50-50 ball situations. I do. Like I can't name more than 10 receivers who are better than Terry McLaurin. I can't name more than 10 receivers who I would rather have on my team than Terry McLaurin. I would do whatever it takes as a GM to keep that guy on my squad. Terry McLaurin to me is a top 10 receiver in the NFL, really top 5 when we talk about guys in 50-50 ball situations. Looking at those 10 receivers in order, I got Justin Jefferson and Ja'Marr Chase as 1A, 1B, A.J. Brown at number 3, CeeDee Lamb at number 4, Tyreek Hill at number 5. That's interchangeable to me as well. Puka Nacua at 6, Mike Evans at 7, Stephon Diggs at 8. I got Terry McLaurin right at 9, right above Garrett Wilson. Terry McLaurin is a top 10 receiver in the NFL. I can't name more than 10 receivers that are better than Terry McLaurin. And in those 50-50 ball situations, Terry McLaurin is top 5. I mean, there's not many guys on this list that are better than Terry McLaurin in those 50-50 ball situations. Terry McLaurin last year had a 94% success rate in contested catches. 94%. Highest rating out of any other receiver in the NFL when it came to contested catches. Could say Terry McLaurin is even top 3 overall. I mean, really, it's him and Mike Evans that are really giving everyone else a run for their money in those 50-50 ball situations. A.J. Brown as well. Like, it's like you gotta, like, Terry McLaurin is really the most underrated receiver in the NFL to me. Definitely the most underrated. He has the talent of a top 10 receiver, top 5 in contested ball situations, but he also has the attitude of and the humility of just a great teammate and leader on your squad. Like it's the perfect combination. Like there is nothing that I would do as a Commanders GM to jeopardize that player's future on my team. Like I'm doing whatever it takes to keep him in a Commanders uniform. If it takes paying him Ja'Marr Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb type of money, I'm doing that. I'm doing that every time. I'm doing that every time because, one, what am I going to get that's better than Terry McLaurin? Who am I going to get that is better for my team, that is better for this Commanders team than Terry McLaurin? Who's going to be able to do more for the Commanders than what Terry McLaurin has already done? Regardless of who is throwing him the rock. Like if anything, seeing what he did this season, like, I mean, aside from the rest of his career, you look at this season alone, seeing what he did this season, his first year with a true franchise quarterback, should be motivation enough to get this deal done. It should be motivation enough. Like, honestly, if I'm looking at these contract negotiations between Terry McLaurin and Jayden Daniels, Terry McLaurin and the Commanders, I honestly see, like, if the Commanders, which again I don't think is going to happen, if the Commanders were to let Terry McLaurin walk or not come to a contract agreement with Terry McLaurin, I honestly think it's disrespectful to Jayden Daniels as well. It's definitely disrespectful to Terry McLaurin for everything that he has done for this organization, regardless of the ownership, regardless of the management, everything that he has done for this organization, regardless of the circumstances of who his quarterback was, who the coach was, who the GM was. With everything that he has done for this organization, it's definitely disrespectful to him and what the contributions that he has made, if you were to let him walk or to not give him what he wants. And he's not even asking for that much, but it's disrespectful to him to not come to an agreement. But to not come to an agreement with Terry McLaurin, it's also disrespectful to Jayden Daniels, who is entering his second year as a starter. It's disrespectful to Jayden Daniels because you're putting Jayden Daniels in, you're not setting Jayden Daniels up to succeed if you're not bringing back Terry McLaurin. If you're not bringing back his receiver one, you're really putting Jayden Daniels in a position to fail because there's no other weapon on this offensive group that really scares a defense to the level of Terry McLaurin. Deebo Samuel included. Like, Deebo Samuel Zach Ertz, Noah Brown, Luke McCaffrey. There's no other potent weapon on this offense, or potent. There's no other weapon on this offense that is potent enough to scare a defense to the level that Terry McLaurin does. There's no other weapon. And that now puts Jaden Daniels at a disadvantage because it makes it harder for him to be able to produce as a quarterback, to be able to make plays through the air as a quarterback. It's disrespectful to Jaden Daniels because you're honestly wasting his second year at that point. By not giving him an elite receiver, by not retaining his elite receiver one in Terry McLaurin, you're not maximizing off of the potential and the abilities that he displayed in his rookie year. You're wasting him. Like you're wasting Jaden Daniels' potential by not re-signing Terry McLaurin. It's because I mean, you look at it, it's a good offense overall. It is. The run game is very solid. It's very well balanced. Brian Robinson Jr. being a workhorse. Austin Eckler being more of a dual threat running back. Jeremy McNichols being a good RB3 in rotation. And then, of course, Jaden Daniels having the legs that he does. It's a very well-balanced run game. But what is that run game without Terry McLaurin? How efficient, how successful is that run game now that defenses don't have to hang back, don't have to worry about any significant deep threat on this offense, allowing them to stack the box? How successful can this run game be against a defense that consistently stacks the box, that consistently would have a front 6 or 7 as opposed to a front 5 or 4? How consistent and successful would that run game be then? How successful would Deebo Samuel be in an offense without a true deep threat receiver like Terry McLaurin? Like you're bringing in Deebo Samuel to an offense where he's coming in as a number 2 option. A role that he thrives in, that he has thrived in his career. Coming into an offense where he isn't the deep threat, where the field is a little more stretched out, where the field is a little more spread, you're bringing him into a situation where he can have a similar role that he had on the 49ers, where he can be a motion guy, he can be a slot guy, he can be a sweep type of a scat back type of ball carrier. How successful is a guy like that in an offense without a deep threat like Terry McLaurin? How successful will Deebo Samuel really be in an offense where he is the focal point for a defense? Like, if you're like in OTAs right now, if you've been keeping up with OTAs, Deebo Samuel is getting clamped up in practice by Trey Amos. And that is no disrespect to Deebo or Trey, because if you've seen No Shame with Shane, I think very highly of Trey. I think he is one of the more underrated pickups in this draft overall. Could possibly be a defensive rookie of the year candidate. A big reason why that Texas secondary was so efficient. But if he is being locked up by a rookie corner like Trey Amos, what do you think? What type of treatment do you think he's going to get from a defensive rookie of the year candidate in Quinion Mitchell and a bona fide Pro Bowler and Trayvon Diggs, having to play those guys twice a year? Because if Terry McLaurin's not on the field, who do you think those guys are going to be guarding? Who do you think those guys are going to be paying more attention to, with Deebo Samuel being the receiver one? With Deebo Samuel as the receiver one for the Commanders, Deebo Samuel is gonna have a blanket on him in all of those in those 4 divisional games. You're making it harder on Deebo Samuel, not making sure that Terry McLaurin is on the field. Because if Deebo Samuel can get locked up by Trey Amos, you think he's not going to get locked up by Quinion? You think he's not going to get locked up by Trayvon Diggs? Shoot, you think he's not going to get locked up by DaRon Bland? It's just you're not putting your offense in a position to succeed. Like if you're counting as Deebo Samuel to be your deep threat, to be your receiver one, there's just there you're setting yourself up for failure. It's really in the best interest of this offense to do everything they can to make sure Terry McLaurin is on the field. Having Terry McLaurin on the field makes everyone better. It makes Jaden Daniels a better thrower of the football. Allows him to be more free. It makes the run game better. Spreads the field for Brian Robinson Jr., for Austin Eckler, for Jeremy McNichols to gain some yards through their legs. It spreads the field for Deebo Samuel to be able to create in those short yardage to midfield, in those short yardage situations. It allows him to have more opportunities to make some catch and run plays. Having Terry McLaurin on the field allows for Zach Ertz to find more holes in the defense. It allows Zach Ertz to be that third down go-to guy for Jaden Daniels. Like it spreads, like having Terry McLaurin on the field, it provides more opportunities for Noah Brown to find holes in the defense. Provides more opportunities for Luke McCaffrey to find holes in the defense. Provides more opportunity for even Jalen Lane to possibly find some more opportunities with the positive reports from him from OTA so far. Like having Terry McLaurin on the field, it makes everyone on the offense better. And it decreases having Terry McLaurin on the field. It also conserves and prolongs the career of your franchise quarterback in Jaden Daniels because he doesn't have to play as much Superman ball. He doesn't have to play as much Superman ball, having to make plays through his legs as much, having to take as many hits, having a guy like that consistently finds holes in the defense and produces, and that can get those 60-yard, 65-yard receptions. It decreases the amount of times Jaden Daniels has to risk leaving the pocket to gain those yards with his legs and putting himself at more risk to get hurt, to get hit, to get clipped, possibly getting injured or hurt. Like it saves your quarterback. Having a weapon like Terry McLaurin on the field, it allows Jaden Daniels to be a quarterback and not to have to force himself to be Superman. So it's honestly, it's in the Commanders' best interest to come to an agreement with Terry McLaurin, which I believe they will. I definitely believe they will come to an agreement with Terry McLaurin. So I'm not as concerned about Terry McLaurin's future on the Commanders, but I am concerned about Trey Hendrickson's future on the Bengals. Like Trey Hendrickson and the Bengals, that negotiation process is definitely worse off than the Commanders' negotiation process with Terry McLaurin. And it's really because of the Bengals. Because the Bengals are such a poorly run organization, are such a poorly run team, that is why Trey Hendrickson's future in Cincinnati is possibly over. Like I don't understand, like as a GM, how do you look at a guy like Trey Hendrickson and say, that's not a guy we absolutely need to have in a Bengals uniform? I don't understand. I mean, 17 sacks, leading the league in sacks this past year, 24% pass rush win rate, which is the second most out of any edge rusher in the NFL. I mean, 19 TFLs, top 3 in TFLs in the NFL, only being behind Myles Garrett and TJ Watt, 2 forced fumbles. Like Trey Hendrickson is one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. Knowing how bad your defense was last year, what do you think it's going to be able? What do you think this defense is going to be without Trey Hendrickson on the field? If the defense was as bad as it was with Trey Hendrickson, what makes you think you'll have a better chance without him? Without those 17 sacks, without those 3 TFLs, without those forced turnovers. Like, I don't understand as an analyzer or an assessor of the game of football. How do you look at a guy like that and say he's not worth the money? I don't understand that. And if the reports are true, it's not like Trey Hendrickson is asking for TJ Watt level money, for Myles Garrett level money, for Micah Parsons level money. Like, he's not asking for anything crazy. He's not trying to break the market. Like, I just don't understand how it really just shows how poorly run of an organization the Cincinnati Bengals are. The fact that they can't come to an agreement with Trey Hendrickson coming off of the career year he had this past year. But not only Trey Hendrickson, they can't come to an agreement with their first round draft pick rookie in Shamar Stewart. Like, if you're looking at the Trey Hendrickson deal, I could see the Bengals being hesitant to re-signing Trey Hendrickson if they just said, look, we were so bad last year. I think it's just better to start over. Start over on defense, wipe the slate clean. Let's develop our young talent. Let's bring guys in. Let's save that money, allocate it to different things so we can restart. I could see that if that was the thought process, but that doesn't even make sense now because they're the future, the young talent that they brought in, that they used their first pick on in the first round in Shamar Stewart. They can't come to an agreement with him either. Like, if you're going to weed out the old, or what you think is the old in Trey Hendrickson, why would you not want to secure your future in Shamar Stewart? Like, if that was the thought process, like if you wanted to start over, I could see that making sense, but it doesn't even seem like that's their thought process because they're not trying to secure Shamar Stewart, who also isn't asking for anything crazy. What he's asking for is a typical rookie contract, a contract that they have offered to their other rookies, that they have offered to their rookies in the past. He's not asking for anything crazy either. So it just, whichever way you look at it, it doesn't, like, there's nothing about what the Bengals are doing right now that makes sense. It just doesn't make sense. And the thing is, you knew this was coming. You knew your premier edge rusher was going to be due for a contract. Like, you knew this was coming. You knew you wanted to pick Shamar Stewart in the first round. You knew you wanted to replace Sam Hubbard with another edge rusher. It doesn't make sense to me why their contract negotiations are going so poorly. It doesn't. Like, I honestly, if I'm the Commanders, like, I could see, like, I was questioning why the Commanders haven't picked up any more edge rushers, because that is something they desperately need before, before starting this season. I mean, you need someone to supplement Dorrance Armstrong with. I mean, you got guys like Matthew Judon who are available, Zadarius Smith, Von Miller. Like, you have guys who are available right now who the Commanders could easily afford and bring in right now to beef up that D line. But honestly, I feel like the Commanders right now are just waiting to see what happens with Trey Hendrickson. I feel like that's what's happening. Like, I feel like, and that to me is smart. Because the Bengals, you can tell the Bengals are about to fumble Trey Hendrickson. They may even fumble Shamar Stewart. Like honestly, if I'm the Commanders, I'm paying very close attention to what the Bengals are doing with Trey Hendrickson and Shamar Stewart, because I would be right there ready to catch that rebound. If I'm Josh Harris, I'm right there ready to catch that rebound. I could see that. That to me is smart. Saving your money on these sort of older guys, who are kind of slipping out of their prime, for a guy who is currently in his prime right now in Trey Hendrickson, who you could afford to give him the contract that he wants, the contract that he is seeking. To me, I mean, that's a target for the Commanders right there. Like, if that's what they're doing, that's smart. I feel like that's got to be what they're doing. Like the only reason that would make sense to me as to why the Commanders haven't picked up an edge rusher yet from free agency is because they're waiting to see what's going on with Trey first. They're waiting to see what's going on with Shamar Stewart first. And you know the saying, another man's trash is another man's treasure. Commanders, as an Eagles fan, that's one of the last things I want to see is them get a guy like Trey Hendrickson. That's one of the last things I want to see. So that would be a great move for the Commanders. It's ridiculous that the Bengals are just being so careless with their elite talent. Like, it really doesn't make sense to me. It's really one of the worst. I mean, the Bengals might be as horribly run of an organization as the Giants. They might be. Like, they're really in that territory as of this offseason. They are really in that territory. Like, if the Bengals were to let Trey Hendrickson walk, there's just no excuse for that. There is no excuse for that. No excuse. So I'm definitely not as so different sort of contract negotiations going on right now. I'm not as concerned about Terry McLaurin, about the contract negotiations between the Commanders and Terry McLaurin, because we know that's going to happen. I believe TJ Watt is in the same boat with the Steelers. We know that's going to happen. We know the Steelers are going to re-sign TJ Watt. We know the Commanders are going to re-sign Terry McLaurin. But what are the Bengals doing? I mean, that to me is the issue. The Bengals' treatment of Trey Hendrickson and Shamar Stewart. But it honestly, as an Eagles fan, seeing the way the Bengals are handling Trey Hendrickson and Shamar Stewart, it honestly just makes me that much more thankful for a GM in Howie Roseman, for a GM like Howie Roseman. The fact that we have a brilliant football mind who knows how to properly acquire, handle, and develop young talent, or really just talent in general, it makes me, I honestly feel spoiled. I feel spoiled as an Eagles fan, the fact that we have a more than capable GM who is literally, it's like he's really just playing Monopoly, just shoring up more wealth, shoring up more assets, like really just competing with himself at this point. Like, just as a point to seeing just how good can he really make this Eagles team? That's really what it's like. Like, it honestly just makes me that much more fortunate that I'm an Eagles fan, seeing the way other teams like the Bengals, other teams like the Giants handle their elite talent, as opposed to how the Wizard himself and Howie Roseman handles his talent. It honestly, like, you see the difference between a winning organization and a subpar to average organization. Like, you see the difference. You see the difference between an organization that has potential and an organization that has been to 2 Super Bowls in the past 3 years. You see the difference. I feel spoiled. I feel spoiled, fortunate, and blessed as an Eagles fan. But that's all for today's edition of No Shame with Shane. If you haven't already, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to all of our social media platforms, and I will be back later on with more shameless takes.